Right, so we will make a start because we only have an hour and a lot of material to get through. So welcome everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Magda Brown and I'm the recruitment manager for this program. I might have spoken to some of you already about your applications. And today with me, I also have my colleague Kate, who you might also know because she works on this program. We will record this webinar so you don't have to worry about missing anything, and we will send you the recording afterwards. So let me just quickly introduce our panel. So today with me, we have two amazing members of our academic faculty. That's Daniel Armenius, who's the BT Professor of Management and the Chair of Management at Said Business School. He's also the Professional Fellow at St. Anne's College at Oxford. And with me also today is Guy Ainsley, who's the Program Director for MSc in Major Program Management, and he actually graduated from this program himself. I think that was in cohort 3. So I will hand over to Guy now, and I will get back to you at the end of the presentation. If you've got any questions at all, Kate and I are here to answer them in the Q&A part of the webinar in the chat section. Thank you.
Thank you, Magda. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to this session. What I'm going to do for the first 4 or 5 slides is just describe the programme. And we'll have an opportunity later on to do a Q&A about if you've got any issues or questions about the programme itself. But I'm just going to position it. I'm going to explain how it works a little bit. So as you can see there, it's a 2-year programme. And that is broadly based 18 months of highly structured study, followed by 6 months of dissertation writing. But in the first 18 months, you'll come to Oxford a number of times. So on a part-time basis, so most people, whilst they're doing this program, work full-time as well. So your time commitment during the first 18 months particularly will be around 40 hours per module, which is, you know, broadly sort of 10 or 15 hours per week. You then come to Oxford for 5 days. We have 5 days, which is 4 days of structured teaching and 1 day of other activities that are based around the study of the programme. And then you'll have about 40 hours after each module to write an assignment. The location's in Oxford, very important. This is not an online programme. You are expected to physically attend in person in Oxford. The entry requirements, as you can see, good undergraduate degree or equivalent professional qualifications. So interesting, you're not required to have an undergraduate degree, but the vast majority of people that apply do have undergraduate degrees. And many people have additional degrees and lots of people have professional qualifications. We're looking for a minimum of 7 years of relevant professional experience. This is not an MBA or an MBA, so we are looking for people that have been in industry, been in commercial roles, been in project management. It just says relevant professional experience. So that doesn't have to be purely in project or program management. That could be other things. But we do tend to have people who bring work-placed experience to the classroom as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this just summarises the structure of it. So 8 modules of 5 days each in person at Oxford. The modules, as you can see there, they are structured in a way that gives you a really very strong foundation in the topic itself. And I say foundation, this is not foundational project management. This is foundational to understanding major program management, which is different. We then do a research module, research methods module, which gives you a really good understanding of the approach taken in the dissertation. So these modules are assessed with 8 summative assessments. So each module has a 3,000-word written assignment that goes with it, which relates to what you've learned in the module, followed by a dissertation, which comes after the 8th module. And then assuming that you pass all that, and there's no reason why anybody who's accepted onto the programme can't do that, you're awarded an MSc by the University of Oxford. Next slide, please. So this is a typical cohort profile, and what's really interesting is the diversity of it. So the average class size, it varies because of COVID. We're still on the sort of very, very back end of it. But the average class size is about 53. We have had classes up to 60 before, and there's no reason why we can't accommodate classes of that size. The average age is 41, which is it's the highest average age, certainly in the business school, and one of the highest average ages of any cohort. And this reflects the seniority and experience of people that we have coming to the programme. What you will see there is 34 different nationalities. So we have lots of people from lots of places. Now, nationalities is one thing, but places where people work is the most important thing. So we have, I think, currently 29 or 24 different locations of people's work in the current cohorts. And this gives us a tremendous amount of diversity, different perspectives, particularly when we get onto topics of globalization and differences in commercial arrangements and contractual arrangements. Fantastic experience in the classroom to draw upon. 24 employment sectors, very, very diverse. So the obvious ones are represented. So oil and gas, major infrastructure, nuclear, civil nuclear energy, large scale engineering, civil engineering, but also we've got IT, financial services, and a whole range of other things, right down to art installation, things like that. Very diverse range of sectors. And that's good news, because nothing is particularly dominant. We don't spend days and days talking about, say, physical infrastructure or IT or anything else. There's a really nice range. About a third of the cohorts typically are female students, and that varies a little bit, but that's certainly the recent experience. And as you can see there, the average years of experience is 16 years. So we ask for a minimum of 7, but the average is around 16 years. This slide just basically gives a description of where the typical cohorts come from by percentage. You can see there's a few sort of big lines there. So energy and utilities is well represented, but you also see program management consulting, financial services, public administration, transport. So as I was saying earlier, there's no really dominant sector at all. There's a real diversity, and the age bars there as well, the age groups, as you can see, the highest number, the incidence is 35 to 39, but we've got a really nice broad range of people, and they all bring different perspectives and thoughts and ideas. So this sort of diversity adds to the mix. It really sort of gives us a very lively and dynamic cohort feel. So this is a very brief slide about the teaching and learning on MMPM, and there's a couple of things to note. Firstly, this is face-to-face, and our face-to-face in Oxford works because we have a lot of in-class debate. We don't sit there in silence. We, as the next line says, we're looking for people to participate. You don't just sit there in class and listen. You can if you want. There's no problem with people doing that. We're not going to force people to participate, but we find within half an hour of a module starting, or the first module, there's lots of discussion, lots of debate across the classroom between not just the faculty and members of the class in the cohort, but across. And this carries on through the 2 years and well beyond. We need people to be positively critical. And what we mean by that is we want people to debate and develop new ideas and new methods of application. This is really important because the speed of change that's going on, not just in major programs, but generally at the moment, is very high. So there isn't any such thing really as a really good body of empirical evidence that relates, say, to COVID or other things that are happening, or electrification, or AI, for example. All these things that there's no sort of really solid empirical base because they're so new. So we're looking for people, including people in the cohort, to sort of structure this debate and give us ideas and think about application. So it's a really, really collaborative and dynamic class culture that we build, and we've never had to build it. It just automatically, instantly happens because, you know, that's what we want. And it's made very clear to people from the very first second we start, that's what we expect. Next slide, please. So I think this is not me, is it? This is somebody else. Or is it me?
I could jump in.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Not a problem. So very quickly, when you join Saïd Business School, Saïd Business School is the biggest department, integrated part of the University of Oxford. We're the largest department in social sciences division. And when you join Saïd, you also join Oxford. And our students of this program are all members of an Oxford college. So when you get a successful offer to study with us, you will also be asked to choose a college membership, a college that you want to join. And there's 39 different colleges at Oxford, and this college experience enables you to make wider connections with different communities, with Oxford faculty as well, with students from other courses and other programs as well. You will also join the Oxford Business Alumni Network, and that offers you again a number of different networking opportunities. We have 27,000 members worldwide and 350,000 members of the University of Oxford alumni network as well. So when you join Saïd Business School, you not only join the business school, you join the university itself as well. So it's the Oxford experience. And now I think it's back to back to Guy if there are any questions, and after that, Daniel.
Any immediate questions about the student experience or no? Okay, well, we can leave questions to the end, so please put them in the chat and we'll collate them as we go along. And now I'll hand over to Daniel.
Thanks so much, Guy. Hopefully everyone can hear me well. Yep. So I am as Guy mentioned and Magda introduced, I am Daniel Armanios. I am the academic director of this program, the BT Professor and Chair of Major Program Management. And in close collaboration with Guy, we have the distinct pleasure of corralling all the passion, energy that you will bring to our cohort into 8 modules and a thesis. And so as part of this, I thought we would give you a little taster of kind of what goes on in the classroom, the kind of ways we kind of think critically about our existing major programs and the like, just to give you a feel of kind of the experience as best as we can do it on a Zoom interface. Next slide, please. So just to give some thoughts, we usually, when we think of major programs, we usually like to start with definitions or models. As I always tell our students, models and definitions, they are similarly in that they're always wrong, but some could be useful. And so the way you can kind of think about major programs in the philosophy we have in this program is that major programs are really big scale initiatives that involve different organizations, communities, institutions, delivery partners, and the like, where what goes into them, what comes out of them, and all the time in between is not always clear. For a more practitioner view, we can think of this in terms of metrics of usually projects that are 1 billion or more, but again, we can debate that. For example, there's quite a few really complex, very large scale IT projects that will never hit a £1 billion mark, but are still very complex, interdependent, have the similar features or have major programs in their own right, affect millions of people, and take 5+ years to build. If you look at HS2, it takes decades to build. And so what that means is often the program manager, the project manager that starts this is not the one that's going to finish it. And so you have to build in handoffs in between. And so with that, on the next slide, I may ask those in the audience, participants, what kind of projects for you or programs for you come in mind when you see that definition? Any projects, programs, feel free to type it in. I'll synthesize as I see them. No one's allowed. As I always say in my classroom, I don't take silence to mean agreement or understanding. So which brave soul is going to be willing to maybe put in a few words here and there? No?
There's a couple of answers in the Q&A.
Oh,
chat.
in the Q&A, so they're all in Q&A. Excellent.
Yeah.
Infrastructure, perfect. Government and software implementation, rollout, railway programs. Nice. So we're seeing, oh yeah, okay. Perfect. HS2 Olympics, airports, oil and gas. So you're thinking large. Usually the answers I'm seeing here. Adrienne brought up a good one on humanitarian programs. We'll talk about this or kind of engage with in the middle, but we're thinking of kind of large scale, either physical hardware that's designed for physical connectivity or hard infrastructure that's designed for digital connectivity, like broadband and the like. So if we toggle through the slides a little bit, what you get essentially is, London Stadia, bridges, the kind of large scale infrastructure programs. If we could toggle the slides, please. Yeah. So these are the kind of things. We also talked about the digital side. So what I usually do to kind of, when I'm in the classroom, I usually try to instill some provocation, not necessarily that this means what we're going to talk about in a few minutes here are major programs in their own right. They're mainly designed to be provocations to make us rethink what elements could be in a major program or not, or even to debate whether what we see is new trends are just fads or fashions of the time. And so if you may go to the next slide, please. And so when I talk about these trends coming up, I want you to ask yourself, do you see elements of major programs in here or not? Is this just a fad or fashion? And if you do, what kind of opportunities and challenges come to mind? If we can toggle some slides, please. Yep. So the next slide, how many of you have heard the company ICOM? Some of you may have, some of you have not. They are a startup that 3D prints infrastructure. So they did their first permitted house in Austin. They've now built an entire community in Tabasco, Mexico. Because they can print layer by layer using a proprietary printing machine called the Vulcan and a proprietary substance called Lavacrete. They can also do really quick tailoring of different structures. So there's a lot of military applications of interest because you can quickly print out bridges, infrastructure to really mobilize forward deployment operations. And in space, if we need to look at unique things for the Martian lunar climate, that can they can tailor those kind of printing applications. The valuation, if you want to use valuation as a metric of a large scale infrastructure program or major program, it's about $2 billion. And if we go to the next slide, you can kind of see how this looks. So this was their first house on the left. It was built in 2018. It has it takes 2 days of print time. The base and the foundations are all print. So the fittings, the windows and stuff are all traditional build. 350 square feet, $10,000 to build it. Fast forward 1 year later, they cut the print time in half. They expanded the size to 500 square feet. And the mortgage for these houses is about $20 per month for 7 years, which is pretty remarkable in this instance. If we can go back, please. In this instance, because this community is built on $3 a day. And so this is remarkably affordable, even for really low income communities. And when a new technology gets built, we oftentimes to help people understand how it's used, whether it's a startup or a major program or a manager in such a program, they usually do things that are scaffolding, build demonstration projects to see that. So if we can go to the next slide, and we can look at the video here. I think if you just, yep, perfect. Oh, didn't go. Okay, perfect. So essentially what's happening here, this is a final product of their housing. There's no need for sound here. The sound is just music. So that's why I've asked to narrate it myself. You can see the flat, whoops, if we can, yep, the flat base of this called the Vulcan's a 3D printer. And it prints out line by line their proprietary substance called Lavacrete. And you can see the kind of tailoring they can do with their designs. And then we'll see shortly at the end here, the way the final layout looks. And so after this is how they build the foundation, and within you can fit all sorts of different designs, have really open design features. Besides the community in Tabasco, Mexico, they also print really luxury houses because people can literally tailor the house the way they exactly want it. So it also meets a very high-end clientele as well. Go to the next slide. The next example we have here is Zipline. And Zipline is a drone-based delivery company predominantly working in Africa. And what they do is that, for example, if you're in an area that doesn't have any infrastructure, you also see you can, and let's say someone is in need of assistance, medical assistance, and we know their blood type, they'll take a drone and ship the blood type to that person via a launcher-based system. The valuation of this company is also about $3 billion. And if we go to the next slide, give you a sense, if any of you that know about drones, some of them are vertical takeoff and landing, some are launcher-based, and this one's launcher-based. It puts a small payload, and that payload is dropped or parachuted down into another part of another area of the community. So the idea of here is kind of the idea with these kind of examples is not, you know, you may say, oh, this may make me rethink major programs. Perhaps it doesn't, but it gives you a sense of what's happening now at the interstices of what's historically major programs. If we go to the next slide, some of the work I've done in this space is try to say, where can we find the most extreme examples of major programs that would have this kind of distributed, decentralized feel? And so some of my work has been in Alaska. And the reason I picked Alaska is these towns are extremely small, extremely isolated. You have to fly on milk runs to essentially get there. So these projects have to stand alone. Each of the projects in the portfolio of the major program have to stand alone and work on their own. I'm not asking you to read the text here, but if you're familiar with Alaska, some of you may, is that there's quite a few indigenous tribes. So each of the texts you see here in Alaska is a different indigenous community. So you have different languages around water, different cultural experiences, different relationships with the land around, as guided by the tribal communities there. And so you have different language extremes, you have different spatial extremes, and even extreme conditions. Literally, they have to heat the water lines to make them flow. And so what you can see is we'll talk about, so in this sense, you're seeing really a whole wide sense of extremes that's really having to be at the frontier of a lot of environmental change, a lot of the ways in which we're rethinking even the traditional major programs around infrastructure. Next slide, please. And so you can see also some of the extreme damages that can happen. So this actually happened during COVID, where a fire hit precisely the water system that could extinguish the fire. They had a huge amount of trouble bringing people in because there was also concern of spreading COVID, because when you're dealing with small village communities at the outskirts, they also are not equipped to handle potential outbreaks of COVID. And so you also get in the extreme and acute interdependencies between different programs, like those in healthcare versus water and the like. Next slide. We can look even in other kind of distributed nature around search patterns. If you look at Google or Alphabet and their search algorithms, underneath it are entire sets of major programs in server technologies, cloud migration technologies, data analytics. Each of the dots we see here are data centers. As of last count that's been publicly available, 2.5 million servers. And what you can see that happens from that in the next slide is that it requires a tremendous amount of water to cool, billions of gallons of water. And even the emissions from the search algorithms that use, for example, the workhorse algorithm they use to better tailor search ads to your user experience. And we haven't even, by the way, talked about ChatGPT and how this would disrupt these kind of things. But even to test their workhorse model just once, it's equivalent to a single trans-American, trans-European flight, let alone the amount of money it is to train even to 2 common languages. If you click once more on the animation, from German to English, it takes $150,000 just to increase the BLU score, which is the performance metric of the search, even by a marginal amount, by 2 languages that are very similar. So you can start seeing when you have these kind of distributed, really large kind of major programs, the costs in a variety of ways, whether it's not just monetary, but also environmental and even other supply inputs, drastically multiply. And so what kind of world are we thinking about here is one where major infrastructure projects oil and gas, traditional infrastructure clearly are important, but they themselves are also becoming more distributed, decentralized. Think of modular infrastructure construction, think of 3D printing, think of other kinds of data analytics, digital twins, building information models that are increasingly making even major infrastructure projects of this sort. And you're dealing with very kind of acute localization as well as globalization. So if we take cloud computing, cloud data migration, cloud computing program, you can deal with any attack on a single entity, but it also could cascade to the entire system. So you constantly have to think about every single edge, local point, as well as what that means for the bigger data set. And then also another extreme, if you think of such as this distributed solar microgrid farm in Zambia, these are usually last mile kind of options for those who don't have electricity and energy. As their ambitions grow and they need more energy, how do I connect other last mile communities together to increase the amount of electricity I have available? And so we're increasingly, one of the provocations and critical thinking we can have, and hopefully in the question and answers, and I know some people had raised their hands in the interim, happy to engage with this further as we go along. I just want to make sure we get time at the end for your questions, is that increasing on the next slide, what we'll see is we're increasingly dealing with major infrastructure programs that have centralization, but are now increasingly distributed. You're dealing with entities that are about, instead of thinking about one project and making it bigger, you're thinking about how do I tailor the project for maybe a big size city such as Chicago, London, or Kampala, all the way to something smaller, such as the villages in Alaska we talked about. It's no longer just taking the same kind of standard tools and procedures and replicating the outcomes. We have to think about the methods because they need to be tailored to different contexts. And so we're getting into a much more kind of large scale portfolio of projects that have to be situated to different contexts and social environments. And so as we go through the discussions, as we have the provocations, I see that some others have already discussed things around AI and leadership and such, and who is effective in making the kind of differences in forms of this. We'll definitely discuss aspects of it. I'm happy in the Q&A to discuss aspects. But this gives you a feel of kind of just the diverse theoretical and academic perspectives that are now coming to bear in this exciting frontier that's evolving and changing as we deal with net zero, as we deal with social grand challenges, and also the technologies that Ravi Shankar and others have mentioned that are also becoming quite influential. And we'll discuss this more in a bit. And I think that's all for me. Oh, yep. Okay. Actually, we have a bit more. Good. Okay. So good. I still have some time. So in terms of the introduction, what things can we think about? And this is in terms of, I'll bring up two. One is scaffolding and one is what we call sensing. Because increasingly, when you have distributed programs, what ends up happening is that who knows what and who needs what is not so clear anymore. Formerly, we're all in the same field site. We could all see what each other's doing. Now we can't. So how do you deal with that? And then secondly, we're increasingly dealing with stakeholders that we have to increase their benefits, increase their understanding of what's going on, even if they're not involved directly in the delivery of the program. How do you find those communities? How do you engage with them to ensure that these programs are really delivering the benefits we'd want to such communities? So next slide. So we could think of scaffolding in two ways. One is re-envisioning the possible. And this gets a little bit into some interesting things that Ravi Shankar and others in terms of logistics that are happening, is that people are starting to use AI and AR both on an individual project, like you see on the lens here around visualizing what a project would look like with augmented reality, but even entire urban landscapes, such as digital twins, to kind of reimagine what's possible. Now, why does this matter so much for major programs? Is because if you're trying to achieve, let's just take a goal like net zero, supposed to reach half emissions by 2035, zero emissions by 2050. The issue is that the projects coming online now are going to take 5 to 10 years to build. So literally the projects that we're building right now, starting to build right now, have to have at least emissions. The problem is they're entering a world 5, 10 years from now that we know is going to have climate issues, but is also warming and we're not clear of it. And so how do you bridge that kind of collapse timescales? In some sense, there's a lot of interesting companies that are trying to visualize that to see if it helps managers better anticipate these problems. So one of the technological leadership things I've seen going on is how to build these technologies to assist in anticipating or forecasting these issues. And so that's kind of rendering the kind of what could be possible. At the same time, though, you have to situate it within existing understandings of communities and people in your organization that are delivering this. So a very simple example that Arup used when they delivered the Beijing Water Cube on budget on time was something as simple as Slack and other things. And so, and what they decided to do there is just simply looking at kind of what are the responsibilities, the roles, et cetera, of each organization, and making sure everybody knew that when they came in, irrespective of who the individual is that's representing the organization. This is even useful in areas where historically they haven't maybe necessarily built that knowledge. So for example, the dairy farm you see here, this is actually Nicaragua, where they tried to formalize their dairy farming work. And so the idea there is how to take informal ventures or informal dairy farms and help them build into a program that could be formalized to increase Nicaragua's competitive advantage in milk. What they literally did was build a model farm that people could walk through and see what would it look like if I was running in this way. So scaffolding both helps envision the future in different ways than previously and helps it situate in the local knowledge and experience of communities that are involved as well as delivery professionals. Next slide. And then on the sensing aspect, we've been thinking about how to use this to better, how we can use our existing frameworks to detect gaps. And so some have asked, like Katharina asked about COVID, how this is dealt with. We actually have a study where we looked at how broadband infrastructure influenced the degree to which unemployment was affected during COVID. And one of the issues is that you want people to stay at home, but if they're going to stay at home, they need broadband. And what we found is that unemployment increased, particularly in counties and areas where the inaccess of broadband was very concentrated to a few people. The reason for this is because when others around you have broadband, you assume everyone does. And there may be a very substantial minority that don't, and those people get really harmed from employment. And so if you can map out your broadband network during COVID and you know precisely the small pockets that don't have broadband, you can start targeting services, emergency expenses, and others, even as a delivery professional that could help shore up those gaps. And so I think where COVID was acutely aware in the major program space was really forcing us to think about the interdependencies between major programs and also try to see what we can use in our existing data, our existing networks of programs to detect gaps. And so that's what we've done here. So for example, on this one to the left, briefly, is that if you look at the small dash lines, these are known as trivial streets. These are pedestrian streets. And it turns out certain configurations of infrastructure lead to certain social activity. So those within, let's say, the box number 1 below or 2 or 3 or 4, where they have a lot of pedestrian streets inside, they have a lot of cohesion, a lot of solidarity. But the really dark black lines, which are non-trivial streets, which mean they get crossed by automobiles, they really stop communities from talking with each other. So for example, 1 and 2, they don't actually talk to each other that much because there's no streets that kind of cross them, pedestrian streets, even though they're right next to each other. And so with the example I mentioned with broadband, if you expand this out to a city, you can then start seeing pockets of people that we may not be aware of that really matters. Now, to the question of Ravi Shankar and also in AI, this also recognizes that if our physical infrastructure has gaps and not everyone has access to the same infrastructure, then the problem becomes is that there could be bias in our AI networks because of physical assets, not because of the representativeness of even data. So if we take this example of this picture of, let's say, a smart traffic control system, you'll notice that most of the things being optimized are cars. Only in the very far distance, you might see one bus. And what a AI algorithm will do, if it's updating in a Bayesian manner, is going to assume this is a path that roads like, and they'll keep cars like, and they'll keep optimizing for cars. The problem is if you have a restrictive bridge or a set of roads that are a gap in the distance, buses may not be going through, not because they don't want to be on that road, but because they can't. And so what could happen is if the physical assets are not evenly distributed, then your AI system will be biased based on physical networks, not just the data networks. And so then we've been thinking about, or people have been thinking about, could you penalize or control in the algorithms bias due to infrastructure networks as opposed to just the representativeness of the data itself, which we also know has some biases. And so with that, next slide, the kind of ideas that I think this program is enhancing is that major infrastructure projects, oil and gas, digital transformations, logistics, other things are still crucially important major programs, and you'll continue studying them in this MSc. What we're looking at is how do we prepare you both for the current world and also thinking about trends into the future? How are these historically infrastructure programs becoming more modular? How are they handling different technological disruptions? How are they handling pressures from governments and others to deliver not benefits much more immediate and in the short-term communities around them, as well as new areas, new frontiers for major programs, such as humanitarian logistics, such as cloud computing, such as distributed renewable energy programs, and others that need the kind of thinking that is brought into this MSc. And so tomorrow's events are going to need that kind of distributed, decentralized thinking. And I've mentioned a couple of ways to stress test that with scaffolding sensing, but there's 8 other modules for which you'll get very different takes and perspectives and really widen your toolkit for how you can think of which this is only kind of a taster. And with that, I think I'm definitely now on to the next part.
I think you're done, Daniel. Thank you so much. This is my slide now. I just wanted to have a quick look at the Q&A, just to see if there are any questions for Guy or Daniel, and if we need to answer them. No, I think Daniel managed to answer all of them during his lecture. So thank you so much for joining us, and a huge thank you to Guy and Daniel, who are very busy, but thank you so much for the very interesting insights into this program. And I just wanted to say that if what you heard has sparked an interest in the program, if you decided that you want to apply, our next application deadline is on the 5th of June, and then the final application deadline is on the 24th of July. And this is my email address. I am here to help you with your application journey, help you if you've got any questions about the program. If you would like to book a quick call with me, please feel free to email. We also do CV reviews through our web form on the website as well. And now I will stop sharing my screen so I can actually see questions as well in the Q&A, just to see if I need to answer anything verbally, what Kate might have not answered earlier. There is a question about scholarships, which I can answer. I don't think Kate has answered this one. So unfortunately, the deadline to apply for scholarships for this intake has passed. That was in April, but we do usually have a number of scholarships available, usually 4 directors awards and 2 women's awards, and every single one is worth 50% of the fees. It is recommended to apply as early as possible if you guys are interested in scholarships, and that application requires an additional scholarship essay, sort of explaining why you are a good candidate for the scholarship.
Someone's asked a question about attendance across the 8 modules. And if I could just answer that, you are expected to attend all 8 modules. There's no online option. There's no sort of alternative method other than being there in person. We do occasionally have students who, for whatever reason, illness, family event or something, can't attend a module, but they're still expected to submit a submission, and you can't move on to the dissertation until you've attended and completed all 8 modules. So please be aware that is a stipulation and requirement of this program.
Thank you, Guy. I think someone is asking about who could potentially qualify for a scholarship. I don't want to spend too much time on scholarships because they're not available for this intake, but just very briefly, Director's Award is awarded on merit. So this is the award for the best candidates, best in a sort of academic way. We also look at your work experience, the quality of your application, and the quality of your interview as well, and what sort of impact you can make with this program, with the knowledge from this program after you graduate as well. That's an impact on your organization or your region or the country as well. And obviously Women's Award is there to encourage more women to apply for the program as well, but it is for the females who maybe have worked in sectors or roles that are usually dominated by men and who have overcome any particular obstacles in their career as well. But I can go into more detail about scholarships if anyone is interested in sort of one-to-one calls as well.
Okay, there's a question there. I think, Kate, you wanted to answer a question about how the university supports students in research work, or I can do it. It's up to you.
I more wanted you to do that, Guy.
Okay, right. Okay, fine. In which case, I will do. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a number of approaches. One is that we allow students to have a very broad view of what their research will be for their dissertation. So provided that it is in the topic of major programs, there's no stipulation as to how you approach it or what their specific subject is. We support through a number of routes. One is that every dissertation is supported by an academic supervisor. That role is to help you understand the process and do good research, not to do it for you, but help you do good research. We also provide masterclasses throughout the dissertation process on the technical aspects of research and structuring and writing. And also we provide a whole module on research methods where you'll trial out collectively and individually some approaches to research.
Thank you, Guy. There's a question there. Does the deadline include collecting references from referees? No, we can be flexible with it. We know obviously people are usually very busy. So if they arrive slightly after the deadline, that's absolutely fine.
Somebody's asked a question about an AI module. There will not be a specific AI module, but AI will be touched on pretty much all modules. In particular, when we talk about transformation, systems thinking, particularly, we'll touch on it as well. It's a very, very new topic in some regards, but also a well-established topic in others. And merely specifying what you mean by AI is half of the battle these days. So it will be touched on, but there is no specific module on it.
Yeah, and just as to further emphasize what Guy said, for example, in systems thinking, there'll be some discussions even on the role of ChatGPT. And then also there's bigger questions about, is this just the flavor of the month, or is this really reshaping how major programs operate? So I think the way with these kind of bigger digital, social, existential questions, you see it woven throughout all the modules in different aspects. And the idea is how to attack it from the perspective of leadership, contracting performance, risk, systems thinking, designing the organization. You see those kind of elements woven through.
Thank you, Daniel. How long does it usually take to receive the admission decision after the interview? Try to get back to you within sort of 10 working days after your interview, maybe slightly longer at busy times around deadlines. I think Kate just answered the question as well. There is a question there about the visa requirements to travel to the UK. And Kate, correct me here if I'm wrong, but you guys come here on a short stay visitor visa. It is not a full-time program, so it's not a student visa, it's not a tier 4 visa. And you do have an offer letter from the University of Oxford to support any visa applications for that.
That's right. It's once a deposit payment has been received as well, the admissions team can provide a document that's sort of designed particularly to support any visa application. Though, as Magda says, the program doesn't support a student visa. For any visa requirements, questions or concerns that are in any way complex, we would always recommend that you consult kind of an external expert. The university also has a visa support team to whom we can refer you as well if you need any more detailed advice.
Thank you, Kate. Guy, there's a question here. I wonder if you could answer this one. What can we expect from the non-teaching day during the residential week? And will there be any guest lectures?
Yeah, so what we're going to try and do is put guest lectures into it where appropriate, organise student activities. So in the first two modules, there will be study work, for example, making sure that people understand where and how to access libraries, all of the other things that are available, such as career support, student support. We'll try and put that into those particular days. So when the teaching is happening, there's no sort of dilution of the impact of the teaching. So we're going to try and keep, well, not try and keep, but we're going to put the student support days and activity days into that day.
Thank you, Guy. There's a question here. Can you tell us more about accommodation? So I just wanted to briefly say that we don't book your accommodation. You have to budget for the cost of your travel and accommodation. And there's plenty of different options here in Oxford, plenty of different hotels and Airbnbs for different sort of budgets. Some of our students also stay in their colleges if there's space, if there's capacity for that. So that's something that you would have to look into yourselves. Although we can support you with some options. I believe the program team can advise you on different options of accommodation in Oxford as well. But there is plenty, so no one will be left homeless, definitely not. Okay, let me just have a quick look. Someone earlier asked if they already got a master's degree, would that affect the decision, admissions decision onto this master's degree? The answer is no. There wouldn't be any sort of effect on that. If anything, obviously, that means that you already have studied at the master's level for sort of your academic progression. But we mainly look at your work experience for this program. That's important. Someone is asking about the IELTS. So is there any IELTS requirement for this program? So you can ask for the English language waiver if you are working in an English-speaking company, or if you have studied in the last 2 years in an English-speaking country. So there is a space in the application where you can submit a short explanation of your situation and ask for a waiver if that's the case with you. Guy, I don't know if you want to take this one. Am I eligible to pursue a PhD in major program management after this program?
Okay, good question. We do not currently do part-time PhDs or DPhils, as they're called at Oxford, at all at the business school. There is an opportunity, although it's it's not guaranteed to do a full-time DPhil in management afterwards, and you could extend your studies after that. But there's not that many places. They're quite hard to get, clearly. Yes, there is an opportunity to a full-time DPhil, but it's far from guaranteed. And at the moment, the capacity is limited to do that.
Thanks, Guy.
And if the question is, are you eligible more generally to pursue a PhD in any university after the master's? That's of course the case. Just in case that was unclear, but that's what in terms of the Oxford channels at the moment, guys is reflected it exactly.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks. There's a question there about the payment of the tuition fees, so I can take this one. So if you are given an offer, you usually have 4 weeks to accept that offer, and then we ask you to pay the deposit. That's at 15% of the fee. Then at the beginning of the program, so in September, you have to pay 50% of the fee, and then the remaining 35% at the beginning of the second year in September. So sort of 3 installments. Guy, I don't know if you want to answer this one. Does publishing academic papers count as work experience?
No, not unless you were a full-time academic when you were doing it. But of course, if you published academic papers, then we take that into consideration. It's interesting, but we do require a minimum of 7 years or thereabouts experience.
Thank you. Okay, I think Kate is answering the last couple of questions. Someone's asking about the application fee waiver. We don't usually do that. There is a list of countries that are supported on the university pages. So Bernard, if you're interested in that, you can pop me a quick email and I will share the link with you as well. Okay. Okay, I think we answered all of them. There's a question there about the college system, how to choose the college that you want to be associated with, that sort of personal preference. So after you get your offer, you also are required to complete a college preference form. There's a lot of information on the university websites about different colleges as well. Some of them sort of are more inclined towards sciences, for example. So it's for you to do research, but really it's personal preference, which college you want to apply to.
The college numbers are limited, so even if you do put down a preference, there's no guarantee you'll get your first preference, but we guarantee that everybody will, if you're accepted onto the program, you will get a college place.
Thank you. Thanks, Guy.
Yeah, there seems to be a question at the very top on any association with NHS on major digital transformation. Obviously, major program management, the work is definitely applicable. We have quite a few students throughout the years and cohorts that have come from the NHS. So, and likely or not, you may even find someone in your cohort that's involved with that's doing that work. And in terms of any formal association, there is none, but obviously some people will do as part of their dissertation work, try to find organizations, others that will support data access, interviews and the like. And some do obviously try to do interviews or work around NHS or even other companies as digital transformation processes. But in terms of any formal association, there is none. But through your cohort, there are likely those who are professionals there, as well as potentially an opportunity to engage with these organizations, try to find them as methods to do with your thesis work.
Yeah, and we have a student doing a dissertation at the moment who works for the NHS and is specifically doing it on digital transformation in the NHS in the current cohort. So they're never that far away.
Actually, this next question, I think, links to that. Are there any opportunities to get engaged in real-world challenges, industries during this program?
Well, most students work full-time, so they are directly involved. Most students are directly involved in major program development, delivery, application in their day-to-day work.
Thanks, Guy.
And I would say, yeah, sorry, really quick. I would say also through, you'll see the kind of case examples that are selected, the guest speakers, the kind of pedagogy, the other things, you get really exposed to some of this as part of the manifestation of the modules and the like. And even some of the students themselves bring it up as part of the discussion. So often or not, what's kind of really fun about this program is often the wealth of experience is not just residing on the faculty, but your fellow cohort members. And you'll see a lot of this come out. So any challenge that you're thinking through is honestly not too far away from the minds of probably others in the cohort. And it generates all sorts of interesting live discussions, debates, and even other kinds of things that we try to cultivate through the content of the module, through the selection of speakers and the like. So very central in what we do.
Yeah. Someone's asked, do we interact with other members of other cohorts during the program? Yes, it's entirely up to you to go and find not just other cohorts of MMPM, but also EMBA, MBA, etc., which are obviously in Oxford whilst you're there. The other thing I would also point out is that, I say this to everybody who applies as well, is that no matter what you're thinking of, no matter how obscure, no matter how odd you might think it is, there's somebody else at Oxford thinking the same thing. All you've got to do is go and find them. They could be through your college or other means as well, finding the interest groups. So whether it's development, whether digitization, whatever it is, it's already likely to be active in some form in a university. So within the university or the business school. So just go off and find them. Somebody's talked about what career opportunities does Oxford give international students. We have a very strong careers team. who can help you find opportunities, look for opportunities, structure your CV, structure your proposals, etc. So we have a very active and well-regarded careers team.
Thank you, Guy. And that sort of links to the next question. I think Kate has answered already. There was a question whether alumni networks can help with recruitment. Yes, absolutely. Networking is incredibly important, and our alumni networks are very active. So there are multiple ways of getting involved and getting engaged with them. And our former MMPM students as well, our alumni, they're very happy to help and get involved and get connected with current students as well.
Yeah, someone's asked about recommending guest speakers. Yes, always glad to have good recommendations. What are the key skill sets you observe at the cohort required as part of this program? Critical thinking, creativity, always very, very useful. Getting stuck in with each other and collaborating. We don't compete with each other on this program, we collaborate, and that's a key skill.
Yeah, and learning to manage in adaptable, complex environments. I think something very indicative of both those who come in and also what you learn. And also thinking of the program holistically, not just the delivery of it itself, but also in context to other things going on in the environment, which is what you'll see in systems perspectives, and also thinking through and trying to anticipate where there could be risks and uncertainties is another aspect. So there's quite it's in a sense, it's giving you a really strong, broad strategic view of both your major program, how to manage it, lead it, but also understand it relative to other stakeholders and environmental conditions surrounding it.
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel. So it's almost 2 o'clock. So perfect timing. And I've got the last quote from someone who actually put in the chat, I have a strong feeling that this MSc program will be very exciting. I completely agree. This is, I think, a good summary of our webinar. So I just wanted to say thank you again to Daniel and Guy and Kate as well for joining us today. And thank you for everyone who just spent an hour with us, and hopefully you did find this program interesting and exciting. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.